Welcome to Study Session 7, Tools for Helping. Introduction. In this study session, we will examine productive relationship tools for helping significant elements of body language, helpful responses that a social worker can make. We will also expose you to how you can make use of confrontation as a tool for helping people. In the same vein, clarifying, paraphrasing, highlighting, and summarizing are very important tools in effective report writing. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this study session, you should be able to discuss at least 4 tools for helping. Write a good and effective report. Tools. The helping process is an exploration between client and worker of the alternatives available to solve a problem and bring satisfaction to the client's life. The worker needs to be able to stimulate the client's thinking and to make her aware of the choices and possibilities available and helpful in seeking resolution of a problem. The helping relationship becomes the primary tool for problem solving. Within this entity, the worker brings to bear all his skills needed to enable the client to gain enough trust in her and in the therapist to sort out a problem effectively. If the helping relationship is productive one, it will result in the clients gaining sufficient motivation to see a problem through a positive resolution. For the relationship to evolve and for the client's trust and motivation to grow, there must be ample communication between client and worker. It is through the communication that occurs in the helping relationship that problems get solved and helping happens. Achieving a high level of helpful communication cannot occur without the client's full anticipation, of course. But the responsibility for facilitating communication rests with a worker. It is he who must attend to the flow of communication and direct it always toward its appropriate conclusion, problem solving. If he is able to balance well, helping will be enormously facilitated. The tools for helping and for the balancing act are 4. Observation, listening, questioning, responding. Through the worker's balanced utilization of these 4 helping techniques in an interview, problem solving will be effectively mobilized. Observation. Observation is the first route to learning how to problem solve. In order for there to be effective results, the worker's observation skill must be fine-tuned. He must be objective in his appraisal of any given situation, individual, or piece of information. He cannot allow himself a subjective reaction born of his own predispositions or biases, rather than on his actual observation. There is little room in helping for the so-called educated guess, unless it is quickly backed up by corroborating information. In other words, don't make a case on circumstantial evidence. For example, if a woman tells you that she got a little drunk the night before, don't assume that she is an alcoholic. Or if a child tells you that he hates his parents, don't immediately assume that they are neglectful or abusive. There is room in the art of helping for hunches and vibes, but each must be carefully checked out against supportive or non-supportive data. Nor can we draw conclusions about complex human beings on the basis of a once-only observation. We know that single causation is an incredibly rare occurrence. In people's behavior, this is particularly true. People do not always react predictably or consistently. The same stimulus may trigger one of an array of different responses. Likewise, many stimuli may result in one particular response. Our observations as professionals must be guided by a wait-and-see attitude. We cannot afford to jump to conclusions without a substantial amount of supporting evidence if we are going to be really helpful. Assuming that the worker is cautious and objective in his ability to observe accurately, he is still confronted with an enormous task. There is a great deal of communicating going on in every interview, which the worker must try to observe. He must be watchful for many cues and clues in the interview that can help him to help. Observation requires a familiarity with the language of non-verbal communication. Through this medium, known popularly as body language, an individual communicates a great deal to the person who is able to understand his unspoken messages. There are a number of significant elements of body language that a worker must be attuned to observing. Clothing, tension, distance, head movements, physique, eye contact, touching, posture, facial expression, gestures. Body language is a direct expression of how a person feels about herself and the situation in which she finds herself. A person who thinks well of herself will usually be dressed neatly and stand erect. A depressed person, on the other hand, will tend to dress more carelessly and to maintain more physical distance from other people. In addition to a person's general posture and appearance during an interview, our gesturing and movements will be an indicator of our emotional state. Our eye contact with the worker will also reveal how engrossed she is in the interview. On the contrary, a client whose eyes are darting all over the room is giving a worker a direct message that she is either very bored with the proceedings or is feeling very anxious about the topic for discussion. Changes in a person's appearance and mannerisms during the course of either a single interview or the longer helping process can sometimes serve as a kind of barometer of the client's reactions to the progress or lack of it toward problem solving. Listening. Effective listening all too often seems to be a lost art nowadays. Yet, undervalued though it may be, listening is a very important helping tool. Theodore Reck wrote a book entitled Listening with the Third Ear. This kind of listening is an absolute prerequisite to effective helping. Every worker must cultivate a third ear, which he can tune in to hear more fully. With this third ear, a worker can hear what isn't said as well as what is. In other words, with this tool, he will be able to hear his client's music as well as our words. Here too, body language is quite useful. A person's tone of voice and their speech patterns are both significant in the contributions they make to an understanding of an individual if the worker is listening carefully. The meaning of a statement will be radically different if the person is speaking with a voice full of sarcasm or if a voice reveals anxiety and fear. Also, if a person begins to speak very rapidly when a usual speech pattern is calm and slow. A worker should discern that the speaker is distressed by something she is telling you. Combined observation and listening will quickly serve to either validate or negate the communication that a client presents. If, for example, a student tells you that everything is terrific and that she is happy with herself, and you observe that there is nervousness in her voice and that she is slouched in her chair, you can readily surmise that things don't really add up. People don't always say what they mean or mean what they say. By carefully observing and listening, a worker can come closer to understanding what his client really means by what the client says. Only when he is able to do this can he really help her. Questioning. Asking the right question at the right time is another of the basic techniques of interviewing and helping. In the example above, it is important for a worker to be skilled in the use of questioning before he proceeds to ask the student why she looks so depressed when she claims to be happy. The timing of that question will have a significant impact on the helping process. If it is asked prematurely, it can undermine the client's trust in our worker. If it is asked with scorn, it can undermine the entire helping relationship again. As I am so fond of saying, timing is of the essence. Every question asked by a worker during a helping interview should be constructed to do one or more of the following. Help the client to express and understand a problem as well as our feelings and attitudes about the problem. Provide the worker with sufficient information about the problem and the client so that it can be helpful at problem solving. Provide the client with the opportunity to learn and evaluate new problem solving techniques. There are all kinds of questions: open, closed, leading, and loaded. Here, again, the worker is busy with his balancing act. The quantity and quality of the questions he chooses to ask and the way he phrases them are of utmost importance to the helping process. In the helping interview, each question should be constructed so that it is clear and easily understood by the client. No ambiguity should creep into the question being framed. For interviewing purposes, a question should, in addition to being clear, be open-ended in that it encourages the client to respond with more than a simple yes or no answer. A worker usually prefers to ask a client to tell him about her feelings or opinions on a subject rather than asking her to just answer negatively or affirmatively. Asking too many questions too quickly or asking too many heavy questions is never helpful. Particularly at a first interview, there is a tendency to overwhelm a client either with too many questions or with a thrust for material she is not ready to share yet. A worker needs to be sensitive to his client's needs and emotions and to refrain from digging too deep, too soon, or inviting a round of 20 questions. A worker needs to be able to tolerate his own frustration at not having all the information immediately and not unload it on the already uncomfortable client. It is sometimes a useful technique to ask a question without directly seeming to ask a question at all. There may be times in a worker's exploration of a client's problem that he needs to learn more than one question, directly stated, could yield. In such a situation, he might then say, I wonder if, about your work, your family, whatever the area of interest, or somewhat more directly, I'd like to hear about your vacuum, your husband, your fears, whatever. Suggesting a topic for discussion in this way is usually perceived by the client as less threatening than a bombardment of very specific questions about the same topic. In an interview, questioning may be used as a tool to facilitate the helping communication and the problem solving in a number of ways. By energizing the client's thoughts with new alternatives, had you considered? By eliciting the client's feelings. You seem to be very angry today. By redirecting the client's ideas. could we talk about now? By linking subject discussed during the interview. Do you notice how similar your reactions have been? By asking for clarification and additional information. When you said, "Did you mean?" There is one little word that interviewers usually try to avoid as much as possible. That word is why. For some reason, we all tend to take up the defensive when a question is directed to us that starts with why. Why are you late? Why weren't you home? Why is the sky falling? In a helping interview, it is much more preferable to use other equally effective words such as how or what. How did you happen to be late? What are you feeling? Both those words come across as non-accusatory and therefore more helpful. There is another matter related to questioning that most workers find particularly difficult to deal with in the course of an interview. That is the situation in which the client turns the tables, so to speak, and start asking questions of the interviewer. The most effective technique for dealing with this turn of events is to simply answer the question with a question. For example, if a client wants to know something about your personal life that seems irrelevant to the helping process, you may question his request for this information. There really is no sound reason why a worker should not feel free to reveal herself with direct answers to certain direct questions. On the other hand, dishing up your personal biography is not going to be very helpful to solving the problem at hand, except in occasional circumstances. Apart from sharing personal data, it is also important for a worker generally to refrain from giving direct advice. Although it is undeniably pleasant to be asked what to do, it is really very helpful. In the long run, try to solve a person's problems for her instead of with her. When a client asks, "What shall I do?" it is preferable for a worker to respond, "What would you like to do?" That type of response will lead to meaningful discussion about problem-solving alternatives and will allow the client, quite appropriately, to make the required decisions for her own life. By observing carefully, listening intently, and asking well-placed questions, a worker will learn a great deal about his client and about what will be helpful to her. Using those three interconnected interviewing tools, worker will learn much about the client's feelings about herself and significant others, her problem and its meaning in her life, our coping powers and our defenses, our values, goals, and aspirations, our strengths and weaknesses, and our readiness for change and our problem-solving capacities. He will learn from what the client communicates and from what she fails to communicate. It will be helpful by taking what he has learned and reaping in a helping manner. Responding. Because helping is a partnership, the responses of the worker to his client's communications carry enormous weight in deciding the outcome of their helping relationship. In the final analysis, there are but two kinds of responses a human services worker can make: helpful and unhelpful. Being ever attuned to balancing his various listening, observing, questioning, responding activities during every helping interview. The worker is careful to gauge his responses appropriately. There are many helpful responses that a worker can make, including giving support, information, reviewing data, interpretation, confrontation, clarification, reassurance, explanation, identification of feelings, agreement, disagreement, reinforcement. Every response given by a worker is carefully constructed and stated so that it will have a beneficial impact on the client and our problem-solving efforts. Confronting. Confrontation is a word that conjures up fear in some individuals. People often associate the word with some form of attack, anger, or hostile behavior. In the context of the helping profession, the term requires a different understanding. Confrontation can be defined as calling to the attention of the client discrepancies between or among the client's thoughts, attitudes, or behaviors. Ivy and C. McDowning, 1987. A confrontation is actually an invitation to the client to become more aware of and to examine more fully certain aspects of behavior that seem to the counselor to be harmful or self-defeating for the client. It is through the process of confrontation that clients are made aware of specific obstacles that have impeded or could interfere with reaching their desired goals. Through this process, clients optimally learn to accept responsibility for their behavior. Confrontation need not focus exclusively upon negative aspects of clients' behavior. It can be used to show clients' strengths and resources they have overlooked. The acknowledgement of strengths can sometimes produce anxiety. However, since then, people can demand more of one confrontation involves challenge even when a positive aspect of behavior is pointed out. Before individuals can change, they must perceive a need for change. Confrontation provides one stimulus for change. Constructively challenging the client can take various forms. Counselors can call attention to the client's self-defeating attitudes, point out discrepancies between what the client says and actually does, focus upon various manipulations or forms of game playing, or as mentioned previous, address unrecognized areas of strength. Following are some examples of the use of confrontation in counseling. Example 1. Client: I'm not really interested in a better paying job. It will probably demand more of my time and I will have to learn new skills and even wear a tie and jacket to work. Counselor: you say you are not interested in a better job, yet you have spent several sessions talking exclusively about it. Is it possible you really want to go after the better job and are afraid of failing, so you have convinced yourself that you really do not want the job? Are you possibly afraid of new demands that could be placed on you? This confrontation addresses the client's incongruent behavior. Example 2. Client: I am really concerned about the shape of the world today. People do nothing to change the situation. People are starving. Trash is scattered all over the streets. Crime is everywhere and people do not get out and talk to one another anymore. Counselor: you say you are a concerned person, but the bulk of your time is spent sitting in front of the television and drinking beer. This confrontation focuses the client upon the discrepancy between what he claims concerns him and what he actually does about it. The misuse of confrontation can have negative effects on clients if the client is not ready to accept the challenge of the offered information. The confrontation is not helpful. The counselor must time the confrontation so that it is most helpful. Clarifying. The basic purpose of clarifying is to make clear what information is being conveyed by the client and how it is being received by the counselor. Sometimes difficult situations and painful emotions can create problems with communication. When the counselor clarifies aspects of the client's message, the client knows how the message has been received. The process of clarifying often involves using the skills of paraphrasing, highlighting, and summarizing. Paraphrasing. When the counselor paraphrases a client's message, he or she rewords it. In doing so, the counselor attempts to focus the client's attention on the main element of an immediate message. Through the use of paraphrasing, the counselor conveys to the client that the meaning and the feelings of the message have been received and understood. Consider the following example. Example 3a. Client, even though I feel I have a lot of friends, I feel as if no one understands me or really wants to. My mother and father don't listen to me. My teachers ignore me and my girlfriend says I'm no more fun to be with anymore. Counselor, it sounds as if you feel that you have no one you can really talk to. Client, yeah, I guess that is how I feel. In this example, the counselor rewords and restates the client's message and pinpoints the basic feelings. This serves to focus the client upon his main areas of concern, in addition to conveying to the client that the counselor understands what is being expressed. Highlighting. Highlighting is very similar to paraphrasing, but has a slightly different purpose. Paraphrasing is often done as a response to the client's immediate message. Highlighting, however, is not an immediate response and does not necessarily follow the sequence in which the client is expressing the message. Highlighting is an attempt to capture the recurring theme of messages during a counseling session. In this way, the counselor emphasizes the main aspects of what the client is expressing over a short time. Example 3b. Following the previous example, the counselor has just spent 20 minutes listening to the client's appraisal of himself and his many friendships. The counselor is now attempting to highlight the major theme and feelings expressed by the client. Counselor, even though you say you have many friends, you still feel that no one really understands you. The counselor has now identified the major theme of the client's message and is again drawing the client's attention to what he has already expressed as his main concern. Summarizing. Like paraphrasing and highlighting, summarizing is a means of giving back to the client the essence of what he or she has been trying to convey. The distinction concerns the amount of material covered. Paraphrasing and highlighting concentrate on the immediate aspects of client messages during parts of a single counseling session, whereas summarizing involves restating the chief elements of the client's message over one or a series of counseling sessions. Schulman, 1982. When the worker summarizes the major points of information and recurring themes brought forth by the client over several sessions, the client can develop a broader perspective on and deeper understanding of the depth and significance of specific problem areas. This process brings to the attention of the client changes in feelings and attitude that may have gone unnoticed. It enables clients to develop a frame of reference in which to see where they were, where they are now, and where they would like to be. Report writing. Report writing is a means of recording the interactions between clients and events. Most reports concern client behavior and progress. Report writing is not generally perceived as one of the more exciting skills to acquire within the human services field, but nevertheless, it is one of the most practical and valuable. Report writing is one form or another is necessary in many aspects of the human services field. All professionals and institutions require a consistent method of keeping track of what happens to whom, when and why, although specific methods and styles of reporting writing vary. Many human services agencies use a standardized form for the various types of reports. Obviously, writing clearly and using the language accurately are important. More specifically, reports are usually compiled with two basic objectives in mind: to establish a documented record for future reference and to convey current information regarding a specific case or event. Weeks, 1979. A counselor working with many clients must keep an accurate report of each one's progress. Clients may be taking medication, which necessitates that a consistent and accurate report be kept on the type of medication dosage and consequent reactions. If a client changes counselors, the report of the previous counselor may be requested by the new counselor as a means of gaining background information on the client. In many clinics, it is mandatory to keep reports of patient contacts, diagnoses, and treatments. Very often, these reports are monitored by state and federal agencies to ensure a continuous level of compliance with state and federal regulations. Reports are crucial when professionals evaluate or consult with public or private agencies, institutions, or schools. For instance, a human services specialist might be brought in to evaluate the effectiveness of a specific program or service. The evaluator would rely heavily on the records and reports submitted. Study session summary. In this study session, we discussed that accomplishing effective communication is the worker's balancing act. At all times during the helping interview, the worker is balancing his own input into the communication. He is both acting and reacting. In stable balance, he does not always lead, nor is he always led. He is not always quiet, nor does he always keep quiet. He is not always without judgment, nor is he opinionated. His responses, acting and reacting, are indeed a fine balancing act. Also, in helping process, the social worker has to employ the use of helping tools, which includes confrontation, clarifying, paraphrasing, highlighting, summarizing, and report writing to function effectively. End of study session 7. Thank you for listening.